Hi guys, and welcome to episode 14 of the In the Hub podcast, brought to you by PlayBox Technology UK. On this week's episode, we discuss all things management with none other than David Treadway, chairman at IKO Media Group. David's career in broadcasting and media began in BBC Radio 2, where he has since gone on to hold multiple managing director and high-level management-based positions in our industry. Really hope that you enjoy this episode. How are you this morning, David?
Very good, thank you, Neil. And you?
Yep, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. I don't know how you're coping with the Lockdown 2 at the moment, the sequel.
Well, it's interesting. We're kind of we've been here before, haven't we?
Yes.
And in a sense, there's a great sense of deja vu. I think for me, one of my issues is I'm very worried that people in the UK aren't taking lockdown as seriously second time around as they did first time, but there was a kind of sense of adventure first time, even though it's a horrible situation and people dying and so on. There was this kind of, we were presented with a situation not many of us have come across before, and I think that's also the case in other parts of the world. So governments and health authorities and all all those involved have to work twice as hard second time around, and I think that's one of the issues that faces us. And I think people need to be reminded that this is not a jolly jape. It's we're doing it for a reason.
David, I mean, you've had quite a variety of positions in organisations like the BBC and WRN throughout your career. Could you just run us back to how you got started in the broadcasting and media industry?
Yeah, so my motivation behind all this many years ago was I loved pirate radio, and I grew up in the era of Radio Caroline and swinging Radio England and Big L, and all those, and it was terribly exciting for a teenage lad. And previously, there'd been 2 hours of pop music on the BBC Light programme on a Sunday, and Radio Luxembourg, which was not it was not necessarily a comfortable listen because of the signal strength and the fact it came and went, especially after dark and all that nonsense. And suddenly the pirates introduced people like me to the prospect of a form of radio that people elsewhere in the world had got used to many years before, but we hadn't. And that really, I think, sowed the seeds for me wanting to be involved in broadcasting in some way. And initially I thought it was going to be a radio, and indeed my initial kind of forays into broadcasting were in radio through BBC Local Radio, and then national radio in the national regions in the UK. And I ended up becoming the chief assistant of BBC Radio 2, which is like the deputy controller responsible for scheduling and commissioning and so on. And that was a very interesting time in my career. Moved from radio into the cable and satellite business, and was the MD of United Artists Communications in the Southwest, based in Bristol. Had two sort of franchise areas that I was responsible for, both the Avon and the Cotswolds franchise initially. And then moved on from that into media in retail environments through a company called Firebrand Media, where we were putting TV into convenience stores and promoting products. And then eventually that led me to broadcast services and WRN Broadcast, and then RR Media, and then MX1, which is part of, or was, it's no longer a brand, but was part of SES, and is now called SES Video. Then I went off and did an interim role in Dubai, came back from that, and then accepted the chairman's position with IKO Media Group. So I'm kind of semi-retired now.
That's what they all say, David.
Yeah. But I've always been interested in trying to help young companies,
Yeah.
navigate their way through commerce. I mean, it's something I've always enjoyed doing, and I still really enjoy working with younger companies, startups, and so on. And I've done a little bit of that in the past as well, during my time in venture capital. So I really enjoy that idea of working with people to encourage growth and realize growth, both in the commercial sense and in the people sense as well, as it happens.
Just how often are you still kind of into the radio kind of industry? Are you still dipping your toes in, or are you fully out of that now, and do you miss it? Or
I do miss it, actually. I'm not involved in radio at the moment. I'm still a great listener to radio, but it's become certainly commercial radio has become very much a big group operation, and the initial concept of commercial radio, or independent local radio, as then called. It's not a term that's used much anymore, but the L for local in commercial radio tends to get forgotten a bit these days. But the idea that a station can be viable commercially in in a small town or a small city, I think we've kind of lost sight of that a little bit as we've moved to larger groups. And I understand why commercially. It's a huge commercial imperative to try and reduce costs and make things work, and use resources more effectively. But I think it's a bit sad that we've lost some of the local in commercial radio these days.
yeah, and I was going to ask David, do you think it was always the case that you were going to gravitate towards the broadcast and media industry? But it sounds like it was pretty deep rooted into you from the start.
Well, yeah, I suppose it was really. I mean, I had ambitions to be a teacher. In fact, I did teach for a short while. I went to drama college to train to be a teacher, not an actor. And in fact, while I was at it was the Central School of Speech and Drama, or the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, as it is now. Whenever we did a production, I was always the guy on sound.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I suppose that side has always been sort of predominant in my early career. Less so now.
So, David, I mean, if we move towards, obviously, a lot of your positions have been in management roles and high-level management. Just in general, do you prefer being part of these big corporation environments, or do you find yourself leaning more towards the smaller enterprises?
I do. I mean, I've worked for both. I mean, I certainly in early part of my career, I was a jobbing station assistant and producer. I spent a lot of time in music production, actually, both in Scotland and in Manchester, where I, in both places, ran what were then the BBC house orchestras for Radio 2, Scottish Radio Orchestra, and then the Northern Radio Orchestra. So I spent a lot of time in music production, which I really enjoyed, and then gradually gravitated towards management. I was the head of the Radio 1 and 2 unit in Manchester, and then moved down to London as chief assistant Radio 2. But I'm not going to knock my time working for big corporations, because I learned a lot from them and thoroughly enjoyed my time with those organizations. But what I realized was that I was the guy who liked bringing about decisions that could happen quickly. So if you're working with a small team in a company like WRM Broadcast, for example, we could put into action some things very, very quickly once we'd taken a strategic or policy decision. Whereas a large organization can take several months to do that. And so it made us very nimble. And that's the bit I really enjoy about business, being nimble and able to respond to events quickly, and potentially gain a commercial advantage in so doing. So I'm all for organizations that, even as they grow, always remember that actually, in essence, a successful company is a small group of people who make things happen. I think large organizations sometimes lose sight of that. I spent some time in my career in the venture capital industry, looking at investment opportunities and advising investors how to, whether to go ahead with those investments. And it's a sad fact of life that in generally the kind of what they call the mergers and acquisitions market, the M&A field, something like 90, very high percentage, high 90% of acquisitions don't really work very well. Companies, usually a larger company acquiring a small company, forgets why it's acquiring that company. It tries to turn it into a clone of itself. And I've had some very real experience of that, actually, with in one particular instance that I won't go into, where a company I was running was acquired by a larger company, and it knocked the life out of the younger company. And it was a very unsuccessful acquisition for that reason, because it destroyed the kind of the spark, the way suddenly things took 3 months to get decided rather than 3 hours. So I've always enjoyed certainly running and being involved in smaller companies, and still do. Those opportunities where I have to advise smaller companies. I thoroughly enjoy being able to persuade someone of an idea that's going to see real results quite quickly.
Yeah. It really is only once you've worked in a larger kind of corporate environment or vice versa that you realise, just how long it takes for even the smallest decisions just to go through. You've got to go through so many different layers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having said that, it's the larger companies that are very often responsible for the big innovative changes in technology. So there's a perverse kind of other side to that. But I think the good bigger corporations are those that remember what it's all about, and it's all about making things happen quickly, not making a meal of corporate governance in the sense of overcomplicating processes and decision making and so on. It's what sometimes kills otherwise great corporations.
No, 100%. So, David, in your experience, what is the importance of the people and employees within our industry, and how important have people been to you and your company's successes in the past?
Well, I think that people are a company's most important resource. They're a company's greatest asset. It's people that deliver new ideas, new opportunities, new technology, new ways of making things happen. So, in my time as either an MD or a CEO, I've come to realize that, notwithstanding all the other responsibilities that a CEO has, strategy, maximizing, growth and profitability, delivering shareholder value, all those things, health and safety, all the legal stuff. One of the things that a CEO must really focus on is his team, putting the right people together in a team. So spotting people, nurturing that talent, developing and managing those people once you've got them in place. That's all crucial to a company's success. And I think I've had my ups and downs with that over my career, but when it's worked, I think it's the thing that gives me greatest satisfaction. And I can think of one individual who I won't name because it would embarrass him, who's now a very senior guy in the industry. It just gives me an enormous satisfaction seeing that guy's career blossom, and knowing that I played a part in helping it on its way. It's mainly down to him, not me. Let me make that very clear.
Got to give yourself some credit.
Well, I'm just nurturing that talent and allowing him to understand what his potential was, and how I mean, actually, with this individual, I don't think there was any doubt. He always had an idea of what his potential was, but it was how he achieved it, and giving him the kind of steps and the roadmap to do that, and in so doing, of course, getting the most out of him for that company at that time. And so, I think managing people is often is often delegated to others, and I think actually the CEO, certainly in a smaller organization, it's the thing he really needs to focus, or she needs to focus and concentrate on, to make sure that they're getting the best out of their people, because the rewards can be dramatic if you focus and invest in that the time in that. The rewards can be fantastic, and there's no two ways about that. So I think people are the company's greatest asset, and we need to do all we can to make sure that they develop their potential. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work.
We've got to keep
it's
that
also
in
fair
mind,
to say that, sometimes you're barking up the wrong tree. but I've worked with some great managers and execs over the years, and bringing the people on, watching them grow is one of the things that certainly gives me most pleasure in business. It's very satisfying.
What's the kind of one piece of advice you'd give to smaller company managers and management teams that are trying to navigate their way out of COVID-19 in our industry?
Well, I think the best piece of advice I could give right now is don't let COVID deflect you. Just because this pandemic is changing the way we do business in some major ways right now, that doesn't mean that we should panic. Stay focused, stay with the plan. COVID might mean that things are going to take longer to achieve. It's going to take a bit longer to get where we thought we might need to be. Explore how else you can deliver the plan if that's appropriate. If it's so changing the fundamentals of the way you do business, how can you get around it? And also make sure that your people feel safe. That's a given. But also continue to be valued rather. A lot of people are now working remotely. I mean, ICO Media Group, the company I chair, that's always been a fact of life since day one. We were set up that way. But for some companies, this is quite a challenge, and so you have to make sure that the people stay in touch, feel valued, and don't get forgotten.
It's just refreshing to hear some optimism, David, for once.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think I'm by nature quite an optimistic person. I'm a glass half full chap, not half empty. Or is it the other way around? I never know. But I am an optimistic person by nature, and always try and think around the issues and look for the other thing about COVID is that it actually does present opportunities for companies in certain circumstances. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. I mean, there are some obvious examples, such as the medium we're currently using, but where huge growth can be achieved when which was unexpected, and most of the focus we give is the other side of that coin, where companies are hurting and the economy is hurting because of the effects of COVID. But there are some winners in this, and nimble companies will be able to make sure that this pandemic doesn't knock them off track.
This might be a little bit of a sore spot as well for you, depending on how you feel about them, but how important do you think that the physical and in-person trade shows are to our industry? And do you think they'll become less important as a result of this year?
Well, I mean, I love a trade show.
It is a sore spot then.
Well, I like trade shows for all kinds of reasons. If you think about trade shows, particularly the big ones like IBC and NAB and some of those in the Far East, in Singapore and so on. They work because people get together. The conference inside of it you can do virtually. I'm not a great conference goer, actually. I don't go to the conference at NAB or IBC. I go to the show. I spend my week, my 5 days, whatever it is, on the show floor in meetings. Yeah, looking for new ideas, looking for new business opportunities. Obviously, talking to suppliers, talking to the technology guys. Looking at what companies have got to offer. It's about networking. It's about the industry being in one place at one time and celebrating as well. I do think it's a shame that that the big trade shows, and in fact all trade shows, have had to be cancelled or postponed because of COVID. And I think most of us miss those events. I mean, as a company, we always use a trade show as an opportunity to entertain our clients and our suppliers and target some new business opportunities and approach it that way. We're not an exhibitor, actually. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that trade shows can be hugely expensive events in a company's annual marketing spend. My own view is that a company of our size would, just get lost in the noise at one of the big shows. Maybe not the smaller shows. So we use shows to network and to say hello to our customers and our suppliers and make sure that we do the touchy-feely bit as well as the business bit. And that's what I miss. I mean, I did miss IBC this year. Obviously, it had to be postponed. I I had flights booked twice for Dubai for CabSat.
Oh no!
And twice I had to move or cancel them. Finally, they bowed to the inevitable and said, well, it's a virtual event this year, but it's not the same, unfortunately.
No,
and I mean, good luck to those show organisers who are trying to make the best out of a difficult time. But I look forward to the return of the trade shows. I think they will we'll get back to them. I think they'll bounce back. Hopefully, I'm not sure whether NAB will happen as a physical show in 2021, but I'm rather hoping that IBC certainly will. By September, things should be much closer to normal. So I just think hasten the day. As soon as we can get back to them, the better, really.
So just to finish on David, how do you think the future's looking for our industry in general? We tend to ask guests to try and condense this into one word and then kind of further explain it. So
that's quite difficult to use one word to encapsulate my feelings about the future. I mean, I think dynamic is the word I'd use for all kinds of reasons. As you said earlier on, I'm a bit of an optimist, and I do think that there's an exceptionally bright and dynamic future ahead in the satellite and distribution business and the broadcasting business in general. I think consumption of content has seen unparalleled growth this year. Because of people have been spending more time consuming it, whether it be on TV, whether it be online, however it might be. So I think there is a hugely exciting multi-platform future. It's already with us, but it's going to get even more exciting and develop even further. And I think that's going to be key to it. People often talk about the demise of linear, and it's going to be an IP future, and I think actually what's going to happen is it's going to be a multi-platform, multi-purpose future, in the sense that we'll be using, as we are now, different solutions for different needs, for different circumstances. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. And I
Yeah.
think, so I think it's hugely exciting. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
I don't
Yeah.
think that, you would expect something like the pandemic to have a very, very bad effect on a sector like ours, certainly in the distribution side of the sector, because no new deals are being done and all the rest of it. Actually, they are. New deals are being done. Growth is still there. It's still happening. Okay, the OU side of certainly IKO's business took a huge hit back in February, March. Because things, sports and events just came to a shuddering halt very suddenly. But even in that, we've still seen a bit of a change as it's gone on, as events organisers and content owners, particularly the rights owners, have found other ways of doing things. Using television to bring the obvious example to bring soccer matches to the audiences that can't actually turn up and stand in the stadium. So there has been a change, but not just in OU, which, as I say, came to a shuddering halt for everyone. Back towards the beginning of 2020, the permanent services side, we've seen some growth as well. So it's been very it's been different and it's been slower, but there's still been new business out there. So I think that's bodes well for the future when things do. Of course, when this thing finally ends, everyone's going to come roaring out of the starting gates at the same time, trying to do
You
the
can
same
imagine
stuff.
it, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you know how you're going to behave well
Yeah.
before that happens. Don't start suddenly having emergency strategy sessions. Then
Yes. Yeah.
you should be doing that work now, and should have been doing it over the past few months, so that you know where you're going next year.
Yeah. So definitely start planning for the emergence basically now.
Oh, absolutely. It's just around the corner, I hope.
Fingers crossed. If we move a bit more over to IKO Media Group, what's in store for the future of you guys, and has COVID-19 impacted the work you guys do? I know you said about back in February with OU, but if you could, delve a little deeper into that for us, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's the obvious example. I mean, that's not it's a very important part of our business, but it's by no means most of our business. But it is starting to come back already, as I said earlier. So I think that was the obvious impact. I think that leads us to strategize and think about how else we can serve that part of the industry, and that's been ongoing for some time. I think we have seen some growth, a little differently to the way that we usually do it as an international company with people in all different parts of the world. We're quite used to remote working. What the other thing we are used to is doing a lot of traveling. Our execs are always somewhere else in the world, and of course that also came to a complete standstill. We're very relationship focused with our clients and our suppliers, and finding new ways of making sure those relationships don't suffer as a result of the inability to get on a plane and go see them has been a challenge, but it's one that we've risen to, and I think our people have done extremely well on that front. I mean, the other side of it, of course, our operations base is and teleport is just outside Rome. The immediate impact, if you remember, right at the start of this, Italy was one of the worst hit countries, and the impact that had on our staff, with people having to self-isolate, and the impact on rotas and the operations in general was significant. Actually, our team there did a magnificent job in making sure that staff were protected, that the operations continued to function normally, and that clients and their services weren't affected. I think we've learned some things about managing teams as well. out of that. So I think that's brought some strengths going forward. But I think I would like to pay tribute to our team in Rome, actually, for what they achieved during what was a very difficult time in Italy, and before it hit the rest of the world, really. The rest of us were sort of standing by, thinking, "Oh, I wonder if that's going to hurt us." A couple of weeks later, bang! Everyone was in lockdown. But we've learned from that. I think it has informed our view about the industry, the opportunities that are there for us. It's certainly informed our view of M&A opportunities, and I think watch this space on that front as far as IKO Media Group is concerned. I think there are some exciting things that will happen over the course of the next 12 months. So it's a time, I think, of a really exciting time of opportunity and growth for a company of our size. And I think we're going to come out of this much stronger, more determined, and more able to maximize opportunities than perhaps we went into it, just because we've learned and adapted as we've gone along.
Definitely. I think massive respect to you guys for obviously everything you've been doing to navigate it, and obviously just your optimism.
Well, thanks for that. I mean, I understand also the other side of it, and those people who are saying, "Oh gosh, this is bad news," and all the rest of it. And it is bad news for some companies. Some companies will go out of business. But I think business is about adapting. Business is about remembering why you're there and what your end game is, and navigating the journey between wherever you start and wherever you end. And that road is never straight. Even in the best of times, that road is never straight. So I'm a bit of an optimist, but I also I understand those people who are less optimistic than me.
yeah, it's important to. Yeah, I understand. How can people get in touch with IKO Media Group and find out more about anything that you're up to?
I guess the website is the best way to do that. It's ikomg.com. That's ikomg.com, and there you can hit the get in touch or the contact us button, and we'll get back to you. But we're always excited by new opportunities, and as I say, we're motivated by delivering products and services and solutions that work for the client, developed to fit their needs. That's the way we work. That's just the way we are. And we hope we'll see you all again at IBC in September.
So, David, I mean, that's everything. So thanks so much for taking the time out to speak to me this morning. It's been much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thanks, Neil, and good luck to all of you at PlayBox too.
No, you too, David. Thank you.